Ryan Matthews possessed all that one could desire: authority, wealth, acclaim, and a grand estate that seemed to have sprung directly from the pages of an architectural publication. He resided in the vibrant core of Los Angeles, a metropolis defined by its shine and allure, and he expertly leveraged every bit of it for his benefit. At 35, Ryan held the position of CEO at a flourishing real estate firm, transforming neglected areas into upscale developments. Magazines hailed him as a visionary, investors regarded him as a genius, and society deemed him fortunate to have a partner like Evelyn by his side. Evelyn stood apart from the women Ryan usually encountered in his realm of high-stakes negotiations and lavish, wine-filled soirees. She served as a librarian in a school located in Portland, Oregon. At a charity auction in Santa Monica, their paths crossed as Ryan attended to fulfill a PR obligation. Evelyn was present, dedicating her time to volunteer work, dressed in a modest navy blue dress, overseeing a table filled with an array of children's books. There was an undeniable elegance about her, a serene quality in her gaze that seemed to penetrate the dazzling facade of LA. Life took Ryan by surprise. She refrained from flirting. She made no effort to win his admiration. She inquired whether he had ever encountered a book that transformed his existence. Ryan, accustomed to the admiration that came with his wealth, suddenly felt diminished in the presence of a woman who valued tales over transactions. Her simplicity captivated him, and before long, he found himself engaging in actions he had never imagined before. Going to book readings, making the drive to Portland just to see her, and even sampling vegetarian dishes without a word of complaint. Half a year later, they exchanged vows in a serene ceremony close to Mount Hood, away from the clamor of Ryan's typical entourage. Friends and tabloids raised eyebrows at his decision. "She doesn't even belong to your realm," one business partner scoffed. Indeed, Ryan had responded with a self-satisfied grin that conveyed his dominance over this new phase as well. For a time, tranquility reigned. Evelyn relocated to Los Angeles and endeavored to adapt. She felt out of place at the gatherings where women adorned themselves with jewels the size of cherries and engaged in conversations about detox juices. She remained at home, cultivating herbs on the balcony, seeking solace in her own company as Ryan spent extended hours at work. She held the conviction that marriage required endurance, and she possessed an abundance of it. Yet Ryan began to lose focus. Initially, it was subtle: skipped dinners, ambiguous responses, his phone perpetually turned face down. Evelyn observed but kept her thoughts to herself. Her heart was full of love for him, and she wished that love alone would be sufficient. As Ryan's company expanded, so too did his sense of self-importance. The man who had once journeyed to Oregon merely to share a moment with her in a bookstore now averted his gaze during breakfast. He grew indifferent, frigid, and methodical, regarding Evelyn as an ornament that had lost its place in his curated existence. His friends started to ridicule her in plain sight, and Ryan stood by without offering any defense. He had become consumed by the rush of his achievements, oblivious to the woman who had once anchored him. And then arrived the night when everything fell apart. It was a Wednesday in the waning days of September. Evelyn prepared his favorite dish, grilled salmon with lemon rice, a recipe she had learned from his late mother. He stumbled through the door at midnight, reeking of alcohol and a scent that wasn't hers. She remained silent, devoid of any screams or tears. She just inquired, "Do you have feelings for her?" He remained silent. He strolled by her, flung his blazer onto the couch, and murmured, "You never fit into this existence." Those 6 words struck deeper than any act of treachery. Evelyn meticulously arranged her belongings in her bag that evening. With a swift motion, she zipped it shut. He lingered at the doorway, his voice steady as he declared, "I'll have my lawyer send you the papers. Please keep this organized." And just like that, she vanished into thin air. Ryan announced to everyone that she had departed from him, that she was unable to cope with his achievements. She desired a peaceful existence, and he honored that wish. He settled with media outlets to maintain his pristine reputation and returned to his lavish way of living. Fresh faces, exciting gatherings, innovative ventures. From the outside, his life appeared more radiant than ever. Yet, beneath the opulence of luxury cars and towering penthouses, a change had occurred. Evelyn had carried away a piece of herself the night she departed, and he was completely unaware of the profound price he would ultimately pay. The apartment Evelyn discovered in Sacramento was a far cry from the polished penthouse she had abandoned in Los Angeles. The apartment was on the second floor, accessible only by creaky stairs, and featured a kitchen tap that had a persistent leak. Yet, it boasted 2 windows that welcomed the morning sun and offered a glimpse of a serene street where children played after school. Without hesitation, she rented it, signing the lease with the modest savings she had discreetly set aside from her time as a librarian. She refused to accept a single dollar from Ryan, even when his lawyers presented her with a substantial settlement for a quiet, uncomplicated divorce. With a swift motion, she ripped the offer letter in 2 and sent it back through the mail. Dignity had no price, and she had already sacrificed enough for the love she felt for him. Life continued its relentless pace, offering no solace to her. Just weeks after parting ways with Ryan, Evelyn found out she was expecting. She perched in the small bathroom of her apartment, fixated on the 2 pink lines of the test, her heart pounding like a foreboding drum. She remained composed. She remained calm. She rose to her feet, gazed into the mirror, and softly murmured, "You're not alone anymore." It marked the dawn of a fresh chapter, not the one she had envisioned, but the one that ignited her sense of purpose when all else had fallen apart. She began working part-time at a second-hand bookstore and subsequently picked up weekend shifts at a coffee shop in the downtown area. Her days stretched endlessly, her feet frequently throbbed, and her expanding belly complicated her efforts to keep pace. Yet she never voiced a single complaint. Each dollar earned was meticulously placed into a drawer she had designated as tomorrow. Late at night, she immersed herself in parenting blogs and discovered the art of sewing baby clothes through YouTube tutorials. She kept the secret of the twins to herself, not even confiding in the elderly neighbor, Mrs. Langley, who occasionally left freshly baked cookies by her door and brought to mind memories of her grandmother. Evelyn understood that society often rushed to form opinions about a woman embarking on a new chapter, and she felt no obligation to respond to inquiries that were not hers to answer. Ryan, in contrast, hardly acknowledged her absence. His days unfolded in a whirlwind of conferences, glamorous red carpet events, and interviews where he showcased his trademark smirk and extolled his journey as a self-made individual. He pursued women who embodied a singular archetype, tall, refined, and eager for the spotlight. Yet, they were all oblivious to his coffee preferences or the reason behind his disdain for the incessant ticking of clocks. None of them kept him company in his moments of overwhelm or gently nudged him to reach out to his sister on her special day. Evelyn's name faded from his lips and, in time, from his recollection. At least that was his belief. As the months rolled by, Evelyn welcomed into the world twins, 2 small identical boys with blue eyes that reflected Ryan's, yet held a gentleness he had long since overlooked. She bestowed upon them the names Noah and Finn, selected for their subtle yet powerful essence. She returned from the hospital in a taxi, holding them close with hands that, though weary, remained unwavering. That evening, she settled onto her well-worn couch, offering them morsels one at a time, and declared softly, "You'll never understand the feeling of being unwanted." Bringing them up on my own was quite a challenge. There were nights when she drifted off to sleep with one baby nestled on her chest and the other resting in a crib nearby, only to awaken an hour later for yet another feeding. The tears flowed without pause, the debts piled higher, and her body throbbed with an intensity she had never anticipated. Yet there was also joy, those first smiles, tiny fingers curling around hers, the sound of their giggles in slumber. She chronicled every moment in a tattered journal, filling page after page with tales of motherhood and healing, each entry concluding with the same phrase, "We're getting stronger." On a serene evening, 2 years after the twins entered the world, she found herself at the park close to her apartment, observing as they dashed toward her, their cheeks smeared with jelly and their laughter echoing joyfully in the air. A woman nearby inquired if they belonged to her, smiling brightly when Evelyn affirmed it. The woman remarked nonchalantly that they resembled their father. Evelyn merely nodded and averted her gaze. Her lips never uttered his name, not a single time. Yet, she remained unforgetting. She kept up with the latest developments. She spotted his visage in glossy magazines and towering billboards. She was aware of the legal battles surrounding his company, the whispers of misappropriated funds, the interviews where he dismissed every allegation with a chuckle. She observed in quietude as the empire he constructed started to tremble. However, she had no desire for vengeance, at least not at this moment. She lingered in anticipation, observing, and getting ready. Evelyn harbored a secret, one that eluded Ryan, a truth that extended beyond the mere existence of the twins. It was a revelation she stumbled upon soon after parting ways with him, something concealed within a neglected folder on his ancient laptop, which he had previously borrowed to finish a job application and never gave back. Initially, she dismissed it as inconsequential. As she delved deeper into the pages, a chilling understanding washed over her. What lay before her was nothing short of a ticking time bomb. Contracts, emails, forged signatures, illicit financial transactions. Evidence that could obliterate him if it ever came to light. She chose not to utilize it. Not at that time. She stored it securely in a box hidden beneath the floorboard of her closet, alongside the earliest photos of the twins and a silver locket he had gifted her on their first anniversary. She promised herself that the box would remain closed unless he provided a compelling reason, unless he dared to cross that line once more. And deep down, she understood that this day was inevitable. Before moving on to the next part, please consider subscribing to our channel, liking, and sharing it with your friends. The summer heat in Sacramento seemed to slow time, wrapping everything in a thick, languid embrace. Evelyn lingered on the porch of her apartment complex, observing Noah and Finn as they frolicked in the small plastic pool she had arranged in the cool shade. Their laughter echoed through the courtyard, pure and untouched by the burdens of life. Yet her thoughts wandered to distant realms. She had just received a letter, an official invitation to a real estate conference in San Diego. The occasion was significant, featuring Ryan Matthews as the esteemed guest speaker. What resonated with her most wasn't his name, which still had a way of igniting something intense within her. The sender was revealed. Harper & Griggs, the legal consulting firm entwined in her divorce proceedings, was the same place where she had once served coffee as an intern during her college days. The letter was intentionally not sent to her. It was personally signed by Julia Griggs, now a senior partner, who included a handwritten note. "You'll definitely want to be present. J." Evelyn had not exchanged words with Julia in years, yet their paths had intersected multiple times during her stay in Los Angeles. Julia had always been perceptive, discerning, and not easily swayed by men like Ryan. She once remarked to Evelyn that individuals like him construct fragile edifices, yet they overlook the fact that fragility can lead to destruction. Now perched on her tattered couch, that memory glimmered like a cautionary beacon. Evelyn had learned to avoid impulsive choices. She had 2 sons to consider. Yet, there was an undeniable sense that the letter carried a whisper from destiny. That evening, after settling the twins into their slumber, she unearthed the ancient laptop, the one she had preserved through the years, remaining untouched save for the concealed folder she had stumbled upon. The files remained, secured by a password that Ryan had once relied on for all his needs. His childhood dog was named Oakley. She carefully opened the folder and perused the documents within. Counterfeit zoning permits, altered property valuations, correspondence between Ryan and a front company linked to an alias she uncovered tied to his accountant. She may not have grasped every intricate legal term, but she comprehended the essentials. If this information fell into the right hands, Ryan could stand to lose far more than just his company. Everything could slip through his fingers. For 6 years, Evelyn had embraced the quiet, not driven by fear, but by a desire to reconstruct her life according to her own vision. With Julia reaching out and Ryan continuing to shine in the public eye, she found herself questioning whether it was finally time to share her voice. The choice lingered in her mind as she made her way to San Diego the following weekend. She entrusted the boys to Mrs. Langley, who had essentially taken on the role of their grandmother, and assured them she would return in 2 days. The road unfurled before her, an unyielding path that beckoned her forward. The conference took place at an upscale hotel close to the Gaslamp Quarter, a venue where Evelyn had previously felt diminished. As she strolled through the marble lobby, dressed in her understated navy blazer and flats, a sense of tranquility washed over her. She had no intention of seeking anyone's approval. She had no intention of pleading or justifying herself. She had come to observe. Ryan's panel was set for 2 p.m. The ballroom brimmed with developers, investors, and media representatives. As he entered, clad in a sleek charcoal suit, the atmosphere crackled with excitement. He remained largely the same, still tall, exuding confidence, and possessing a charm that was polished enough to deceive those unaware of the depths beneath the surface. He commanded the stage with confidence, discussing the future of real estate and the importance of sustainable developments. Yet Evelyn noticed it, the subtle quiver in his jaw when market ethics came up, the way his hands clenched the podium for just a moment too long. He felt a flutter of anxiety. A fracture had appeared. Following the session, she noticed Julia lingering at the rear. They locked eyes, and Julia responded with a brief nod. There was no conversation in that place. Excessive scrutiny. Later that evening, they convened in a secluded nook of the hotel lounge. Julia appeared more mature, more defined, yet her eyes still sparkled with the same intensity. "I've been observing him," she stated bluntly. "He's currently facing a federal investigation, but so far, no charges have been substantiated. He excels at concealing his footprints. However, if you still possess what I believe you do—" "I do," Evelyn said, interrupting her, "and I have safeguarded it." Julia inclined her body slightly forward. "This has transcended the desire for revenge. It's about fairness. Individuals have suffered financial losses, forfeited property, and been displaced from their residences. Your possession has the potential to lead to his downfall, but only if you are prepared for the consequences that follow." Evelyn inhaled deeply. "I didn't arrive with the intention of bringing about his downfall. I arrived to safeguard my child's future. If he falls apart, it won't be due to my intentions to harm him. It will be because he constructed everything on a foundation of deceit." They engaged in a lengthy discussion, meticulously outlining a strategy. Evelyn would deliver the files discreetly via a secure channel. Julia's company would collaborate with the relevant authorities. Evelyn's identity would stay safeguarded, at least for the time being. She had no desire for headlines or interviews. All she sought was tranquility. Before departing the hotel, she caught sight of Ryan once more, exiting the bar with a younger woman wrapped around his arm. He failed to notice her presence. Yet she perceived it all. The strained grin, the void of genuine laughter, the vacant gaze that lingered when he thought he was alone. She experienced not hatred, but rather a sense of pity. He had cast her aside as if she were insignificant, yet she departed with all that truly counted. As she made her way back to Sacramento, Evelyn sensed a gradual easing of the burden she had been carrying. She had decided her path. The truth had finally emerged from the shadows. Eventually, Ryan would confront the very thing he had desperately sought to escape. The evening in Sacramento was marked by a heavy rain, a relentless cascade that softened the glow of streetlights and drenched the sidewalks in shimmering silver reflections. Evelyn perched by the window, the laptop aglow before her, observing droplets compete in their descent down the glass while her fingers lingered just above the keyboard. The encrypted folder is prepared and set for use. She meticulously reviewed every detail, from financial records and email exchanges to internal memos and copies of wire transfers associated with shell companies. With meticulous attention, she had renamed and organized them, leaving no discernible trail leading back to her. The intention was to transmit everything to Julia's secure server, just a click away from breaking years of silence. And yet she paused, not due to any uncertainty about Ryan's guilt, but because she recognized the tempest that would ensue once this was concluded. She cast a fleeting look at the boys in the living room, their matching brown curls springing to life as they rolled across the floor, lost in their imaginative world of superheroes. For them, the world was straightforward, a clear battle between good and evil with no shades of gray. Yet Evelyn had lingered in those gray lines for an eternity. As soon as she pressed send, a transformation awaited. She may find it impossible to escape her past once more. She might have to respond to inquiries, perhaps even confront him. Yet, if she hesitated any longer, how many more families would fall victim to his deceit? How many additional lives would he destroy while concealing himself behind charisma and tailored suits? Taking a moment to steady herself, she pressed the button and observed as the file vanished into the cloud. The task was completed. Julia made a call from San Diego the following week. All has been reviewed, she stated. The situation is progressing. For the time being, they'll maintain a low profile, but Evelyn. This is set to create quite a stir. Are you prepared for that? Evelyn questioned whether anyone could genuinely prepare for the moment when their past intersected with their present. Yet she nodded. Let them come, she responded. In the vibrant city of Chicago, Ryan occupied a modern corner office, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing a stunning view of the skyline. As he meticulously examined the final figures for his latest downtown development, his phone suddenly buzzed, interrupting his focus. It was Martin Wells, the attorney he had relied on for many years. "We need to talk," Martin said, his voice carrying an unexpected tension. Ryan let out a heavy breath. "Is it possible to postpone this? I'm preparing to meet with investors." Yet Martin stood his ground. "This is not just an ordinary call. Something is afoot. A significant event." A submission of documents was made to the Federal Audit Board. Files bearing your name. Ryan experienced a sudden surge of anxiety for the first time in years. "What type of documents are we discussing?" Martin paused, uncertainty flickering in his mind. "The type that goes beyond mere suggestion of deceit. It provides undeniable evidence. We are examining possible inquiries into misappropriation of funds, fraudulent financial reporting, and an extensive array of zoning infractions." Ryan's universe started to shift. He hadn't experienced such a shock since. Evelyn. It struck him like a frigid breeze. Was it possible for her to have done this? Yet she had slipped away, gone without a trace 6 years prior, leaving no message behind. Even if she discovered something, how could she have pieced everything together? He brushed aside the notion as mere paranoia. Nevertheless, he called off his meeting and returned to California in less than a day. From his upscale apartment in San Francisco, he dialed a private investigator he hadn't contacted in years. "Locate her," he instructed. "Her whereabouts and activities are of no concern to me. Locate Evelyn Monroe." On the following Monday, Evelyn resumed her duties at a quaint local design firm, where she assisted realtors in staging homes. It may not have been glamorous, but it provided for her needs and allowed her the freedom to look after the boys. Ever since she joined, her boss, Candace, had shown her kindness, offering respect for her work without probing into her past. As Evelyn entered the office that day, she caught sight of 2 men lingering in the reception area. One of them faced her, a smile perfected through experience gracing their lips. "Miss Monroe," he inquired. She stood still. "Who is inquiring?" A card was drawn from the man's pocket. "David Henson, Unit for Federal Investigations. We would appreciate the opportunity to pose a few inquiries concerning some documents that were recently provided in relation to a corporate fraud matter." Evelyn nodded slowly, her heart pounding. "Is it possible to hold off until I complete my shift?" The man shared a fleeting look with his companion. "We'll be swift," he remarked. They conversed in Candace's office, the door securely shut. Evelyn provided responses that were straightforward yet concise. She confessed that she had previously been married to Ryan Matthews and that she had stumbled upon certain files unexpectedly after the divorce. However, she did not provide further details on the duration of her acquaintance or the reasons behind her delay in sharing the information. Her only concern was ensuring she acted correctly, she stated with a serene demeanor. The agents acknowledged her with nods of gratitude before departing. Yet the ripple had already started. By that weekend, murmurs began to circulate among Ryan's colleagues. Investors were discreetly withdrawing, and board members were calling for urgent meetings. A revelation in the press has substantiated the federal audit. One article, in particular, piqued Ryan's interest. A blog entry published anonymously, revealing not only the financial wrongdoings, but also the deep personal betrayal of a woman who had once loved and trusted a man who viewed her as expendable. Ryan absorbed the words repeatedly, captivated and unable to divert his gaze. Years had passed without a single thought of Evelyn crossing his mind. Not quite. She was a finished story, a misstep he had tucked away and left behind. But now she had transformed from a mere memory into a looming threat. A sound. A woman stripped of all her ties. He filled his glass and gazed out the window, an overwhelming sense of solitude washing over him as he stood at the pinnacle. The empire he had constructed with illusions was starting to fall apart, and somewhere beyond, the woman he had once cast aside was wielding the flame. Before moving on, please subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. The initial official headlines emerged late on a Friday night. Federal scrutiny surrounds Matthews' development, the bold letters declare on the Sacramento Gazette's homepage. In just a few hours, prominent outlets such as the Wall Street Journal and NBC reported on it. Ryan Matthews, previously the shining beacon of California's luxury real estate surge, now found himself grappling with serious accusations of fraud, bribery, and zoning violations that threatened to unravel his entire empire. As Ryan paced anxiously in his upscale penthouse, handling frantic calls from distressed board members and apprehensive investors, Evelyn relaxed on the porch of her simple two-bedroom home in Roseville, enjoying tea with Julia, her dearest friend and the sole person who had been privy to the entire truth from the start. The burden she had borne for ages was at last beginning to lift. Not absent, but no longer solely hers to carry. Julia perused her phone, voicing the updates as she went along. His accounts linked to 2 offshore firms have been frozen. You were correct, Evelyn. The names correspond with those found in the email threads. This is set to make a significant impact. Evelyn remained expressionless. Her actions were not driven by a desire for retribution. She had long transcended the need for approval. This was about resolution. Perhaps, if justice were to prevail, it would focus on safeguarding those who may have fallen victim to Ryan's intricately woven fabric of deceit. Yet, despite her efforts to stay composed, her gaze inevitably drifted to the living room window, where her sons Luke and Mason were engrossed in drawing spaceships and sharing laughter. They had grown to 6, each one vibrant, inquisitive, and blissfully ignorant of the man whose legacy they bore. She had kept Ryan a secret from them. Not quite. They only knew he was a man from Mommy's past who had a dark reputation. It wouldn't remain that straightforward for much longer. By Monday morning, a throng of media gathered outside Matthews' development in downtown San Francisco. Camera crews gathered at the entrance, capturing the frantic expressions of employees and the tight-lipped executives in their tailored suits. Ryan struggled to maintain his composure. Before the cameras, he wore a smile, refuted the claims, and described the entire situation as a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by the media. Yet within, he was coming apart at the seams. He had never expected that anyone would come near enough to reveal the truth, particularly not her. What he remained unaware of, but would soon discover, was that his descent from favor had only just commenced. A week later, Evelyn found herself holding a certified letter in her hands. A formal request for a deposition in legal proceedings. Ryan's legal team requested her presence in court for interrogation. She was not surprised. She was ready for this moment. Julia assisted her in securing legal representation via a non-profit organization that focused on safeguarding whistleblowers. In a serene cafe just beyond the bustle of downtown, her attorney, a perceptive yet compassionate woman named Dana Whitlow, convened with her. Dana had meticulously gone through all the materials Evelyn provided. "You followed all the rules," she remarked, her hands neatly folded on the table. "There's no reason for fear. Just a heads up, he's likely to attempt to change the story. He'll portray you as a resentful former spouse seeking the spotlight." Evelyn arched an eyebrow. "Allow him to proceed. I refuse to adopt a victim mentality. I'm simply here to share the truth." On that very day, Ryan at last obtained a name. The individual responsible for the leaked documents has been revealed. It wasn't merely a corporate infiltrator. Evelyn was the one, his former spouse, the one he had cast aside 6 years prior, armed only with a suitcase and a stern admonition to remain absent. He lingered at his desk for what felt like an eternity, fixated on her name glowing softly on the screen. A part of him seethed with rage, almost incandescent, that she had the audacity to reappear and disrupt everything. Yet, another facet of his being, concealed beneath the weight of his own arrogance and inflated sense of self, experienced a different sensation. Regret. For he understood, beneath it all, that she spoke the truth. Every revelation she made, every shred of proof, he was responsible for it all. And she had been aware, have seen, had been waiting. With everything at stake, she had let it all come tumbling down. As Evelyn entered the deposition room at the federal building in San Francisco, the tension enveloped her, palpable like static electricity in the atmosphere. Ryan sat at the long wooden table, flanked by a pair of his attorneys. The tailored suit did little to conceal the weariness etched on his face. In that fleeting instant, their gazes intertwined, a lifetime of shared experiences distilled into one profound look. She turned her gaze and settled next to Dana. The interrogation commenced. Ryan's team attempted to unsettle her with insinuations, veiled jabs, and claims of partiality. Yet Evelyn maintained her composure. Each response was articulate, well-structured, and firmly based on evidence. Dana skillfully countered every effort to disrupt the deposition, maintaining control throughout the process. Ultimately, it became evident who possessed the authority in the space. Not the wealthy individual, yet the woman he had misjudged. A modest assembly had formed outside the courthouse. As Evelyn stepped out alongside Dana, a crowd of journalists, legal observers, and a handful of intrigued onlookers captured the moment with their cameras. Without uttering a single word, she merely nodded with courtesy and stepped into Julia's car. As she made her way back to Roseville, a long-awaited breath escaped her lips. Julia remarked that he appeared as if he had encountered a specter. Evelyn offered a subtle smile. Perhaps he did. Yet, deep down, she sensed a different sort of unease brewing within her. The story was far from finished. This transcended mere history. Rumors circulated that Ryan's legal team was gearing up for a countersuit, potentially exploring her custody of the twins. He refused to fade away silently. She was aware of that much. Yet she was acutely aware that she had transformed from the woman he had cast aside years earlier. In that moment, she departed with empty hands. At last, she possessed a voice, the undeniable truth, and 2 sons who were truly worth the battle. The morning following the deposition, Evelyn found herself seated at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of black coffee that had long since lost its warmth. The boys remained in slumber, their backpacks poised by the door, awaiting another day of school. The silence was palpable, yet her thoughts roared like the busiest thoroughfare. The burden of yesterday's clash with Ryan remained in her chest, solid and unyielding like a stone. Yet, it was not solely the past that weighed heavily on her mind at this moment. It was the anticipation of what lay ahead. A letter had come in from Ryan's attorney late the night before. He submitted a motion in Sacramento Family Court, requesting partial custody of Luke and Mason. The words hit her with a force that surpassed any insult or legal threat she had ever faced. For 6 years, he had feigned their absence. As his world began to fall apart, memories of them flooded back to him. Not from affection, not from a sense of obligation. However, control. She presented the letter to Dana first. The lawyer scrutinized each line, his frown deepening with every paragraph he read. Dana stated matter-of-factly, "He's attempting to intimidate you. This won't stand in court, given his background, but we must prepare ourselves. He's resorting to underhanded tactics now." Evelyn was already aware of it. Ryan found himself cornered, and that made him a formidable threat. He was more than just a figure who once commanded a vast business empire. He was a person who would not accept defeat. He was indifferent to the pain inflicted along the way. That afternoon, Evelyn arrived at the school to collect the boys ahead of schedule. She treated them to ice cream and a stroll along the American River Parkway. The atmosphere was invigorating, the heavens adorned with the wispy patterns of early autumn clouds. She failed to bring up Ryan. She didn't clarify why she had become increasingly protective, more engaged, and attentive to every laugh and every small word exchanged between them. Yet she was acutely aware that time was slipping away. Eventually, the question would arise, and she needed to be prepared to share it with them. In the meantime, Ryan found his own universe contracting. The silence enveloped his offices. Staff began to depart in large numbers. Clients were withdrawing from agreements. A formal investigation has been initiated by the SEC. Once a beacon of success and affluence in Silicon Valley, his name had transformed into a cautionary tale, frequently referenced in legal blogs and investment newsletters. In solitude, he descended into chaos. His penthouse overflowed with unopened mail, half-empty whiskey bottles, and the low hum of televisions playing silently, each set to a different channel, none offering any semblance of good news. He often gazed at vintage photographs. One stands out in particular. Evelyn in the days when her smile lit up his presence. The recollection coiled within him, sharp and piercing. She had been aware of it all and chose to remain quiet for years. Just when he believed he had laid her memory to rest, she returned, bringing not only proof but also 2 children. His offspring. The secret of the twins remained under wraps for now. Yet it was merely a question of time. And that filled Ryan with an overwhelming sense of dread. What would happen if the media discovered it? If they found out he had turned his back on his own flesh and blood? His reputation wouldn't merely take a hit. It would be utterly destroyed. He contacted his newly assembled legal team in the late hours, issuing commands and outlining urgent tactics. Locate anything related to her, he commanded. Everything. I seek custody. I desire authority. I crave stillness. Yet Evelyn was pure. Absolutely no controversies. No apprehensions. Free from financial obligations. There are no undesirable collaborators. She juggled 2 jobs. She fulfilled her tax obligations. Successfully nurtured 2 boys who embody politeness, health, and vitality. There was nothing to tarnish. And that, more than anything, drove Ryan to the brink of madness. He had consistently found ways to conceal his troubles within riches, within quietude, within transactions. However, this time is different. In Roseville, Evelyn had a meeting with a gentle child psychologist, Dr. Keating, who guided her in getting ready for the challenges that lay ahead. Should the custody hearing proceed, the boys might be summoned for assessment. Inquire they will about your home life, about you, and perhaps even about Ryan. She was overwhelmed with nausea at the thought. Luke had begun to inquire more frequently of late, exploring the reasons behind his absence of a father figure, concerning the individual captured in the image that Evelyn stored away in a drawer. She realized that the truth was closing in on her, and evasion was no longer an option. That evening, she settled onto the bedroom floor, the boys flanking her, and shared everything with them. Gently, carefully, and with complete honesty. She refrained from bringing up courtrooms or controversies. Once, long ago, she experienced love for someone who couldn't reciprocate in the way one ought to. And from that love they emerged. He chose not to remain, she murmured, gently tucking Mason's hair behind his ear. However, I did, and I shall forever do so. The boys remained silent for an extended period. Then Luke murmured, "Is he going to take us away?" Evelyn felt a constriction in her throat. "Absolutely not," she replied with conviction. "No one can separate us." She embraced them warmly, pressed her lips to their foreheads, and lingered until they drifted off to sleep. The following morning, she positioned herself before the mirror, making subtle adjustments to the modest gray dress she intended to don for the preliminary custody hearing. Her hands shook slightly as she adorned herself with her earrings. Not from fear, but from clarity of purpose. She had transcended the mere pursuit of justice. She was battling for her children, for the existence she had crafted piece by piece from the ground up. As she entered the Sacramento courthouse that morning, Each step resonated with the resilience of a woman who had faced adversity and emerged whole again. She noticed Ryan on the other side of the room. Their gazes intertwined, yet he was the one to break the connection first. In the files, a chill crept beneath her skin. She positioned herself next to Dana, her fingers gripping her wrist firmly to quell the tremors that threatened to betray her composure. Across the room sat Ryan, impeccably dressed as ever, as if the scandal hadn't sapped the vitality from his public persona. Yet Evelyn perceived the nuances, the delicate shadows beneath his eyes, the restless rhythm of his thumb tapping against the edge of his coffee cup, the rigid tension in his jaw when he caught sight of her. For a man who had once commanded the attention of rooms filled with billionaires, he now appeared to be slipping further from control with each passing moment. The judge entered the room on time, an older woman with piercing eyes and a straightforward presence. Dana had informed her that she was just meticulous and not easily influenced by drama. That offered Evelyn a glimmer of hope, yet everything about this day felt uncertain. The attorney representing Ryan took the lead. He depicted a meticulously constructed image of a man who had erred, indeed, yet now yearned to engage in his children's lives. He spoke of new beginnings, of Ryan's entitlement to connect with his sons, of the regrettable choice Evelyn had made to keep them concealed. Evelyn felt a surge of anger, yet she maintained her calm demeanor. As Dana rose to respond, her voice remained steady yet assertive. She presented the timeline, the denial, the stillness, the years Evelyn endured in solitude, raising 2 children without any assistance. She sent in the letters, the genetic analysis, a document pertaining to the restraining order issued 6 years prior. The atmosphere grew tense as Dana finally revealed, Mr. Miles didn't merely depart from Evelyn. He wiped her from existence. And now, as his reputation falters, he recalls his role as a father. Evelyn remained silent for the time being. Yet, when she finally spoke, her gaze was fixed on the judge, and her words resonated not as those of a witness or a victim, but as a mother's voice. She expressed the truth straightforwardly. Concerning the treachery, the evening she was cast aside, as if she were merely an unfamiliar face. The long hours spent at the diner and the weekends dedicated to tutoring. Concerning Luke's asthma and Mason's surgeries, she found herself in the emergency room, tears streaming down her face in solitude on multiple occasions. He didn't reach out. Not once, she uttered, her voice quivering. Now he suddenly wants to step into the role of a father just because he has something at stake? I don't believe that truly embodies the essence of fatherhood. Ryan averted his gaze as she spoke. He fixed his gaze on the ground, teeth gritted, his face a mask of inscrutability. The hearing concluded with the judge postponing her decision until the next week. Evelyn stepped out of the courthouse, uncertain of what lay ahead. Yet for the first time, she felt a sense of liberation in sharing her story without trepidation. The air outside was warm and heavy with the lingering heat of the late afternoon. Dana suggested a lunch outing, but Evelyn politely declined the invitation. All she wanted was to gather her boys and head back home. The boys had spent time with their neighbor Teresa, who cherished them as if they were her own children. As Evelyn entered the living room, they leaped into her embrace, exclaiming excitedly about a school project and inquiring if pizza could be on the dinner menu. She wore a smile despite the fatigue. Of course, she replied. We have truly deserved this. In the days that followed, the tension remained palpable. It only became more burdensome. Journalists began to gather once more, picking up on the hints of a more profound narrative. Documents leaked by a former assistant of Ryan indicate potential financial fraud, while another ex-employee alleged that she observed Ryan forging investor reports. The SEC has confirmed that the investigation has escalated to a criminal level, resulting in the freezing of his assets in San Jose. Evelyn gazed at the news, her mind racing with incredulity. The figure who once reigned supreme in California's tech landscape was now disintegrating, bit by bit. A sense of vindication washed over her. Yet a different aspect of her felt anxious. Trapped creatures fight fiercely, and Ryan was not one to surrender without a struggle. The evening prior to the decisive hearing, Evelyn found herself unable to rest. She lingered in the boys' room, observing the gentle rhythm of their breaths, the rise and fall of their chests captivating her attention. Luke awoke and blinked into the light. "Mother," he murmured. "How are you doing?" She gave a slight nod. "Overthinking again." He extended his hand and gently grasped hers. "We will be all right. Isn't that so?" She fought to keep her tears at bay. "Absolutely, darling. We will be all right." The following morning, the atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted. More subdued, weightier. Ryan's lawyer appeared visibly unsettled, while Ryan bore a subtle bruise close to his eye. Evelyn found herself uncertain whether the cause was stress or something entirely different. Dana inclined her body closer. "I received information from a contact at the firm. Last night, Ryan was removed by his board. The organization has submitted a petition for bankruptcy. Everything is falling apart." Evelyn found herself at a loss for emotions. Release? Triumph? Yet her mind was consumed with thoughts of the implications for the boys. The judge stepped in, reviewed her notes, and with a calm yet resolute demeanor, denied Ryan's petition for custody. She mentioned that visitation might be taken into account later, subject to a psychological evaluation and evidence of stable employment. However, at this moment, complete legal custody is still held by Miss Foster. Evelyn felt the air escape her lungs in a sudden rush. Ryan rose to his feet, silence enveloping him. He exited the courtroom, his gaze fixed ahead, never glancing back. That afternoon, Evelyn led the boys to a quaint park close to Folsom Lake. There was no discussion regarding the court. They tossed the ball back and forth, darted after butterflies, and laughed as if the world had never known a single misstep. Yet, beneath the surface, Evelyn sensed that the story was far from over. Ryan may have faced defeat today, but his battle is far from over, and she would have to remain more resilient than ever. The morning following the custody ruling, Evelyn stirred from sleep, experiencing the first complete breath she had taken in weeks. The sun of California streamed through the curtains of her modest Sacramento apartment, creating a gentle illumination that danced across the floor. In the kitchen, the boys were already up, constructing towers from cereal boxes and laughing over something that only 8-year-olds could appreciate. She lingered in the doorway, observing them intently. Luke with his unruly cowlick that refused to be tamed, and Mason, his expression solemn as he fought to suppress a smile. In that instant, tranquility enveloped everything. The sort of tranquility that had slipped through her fingers for 6 long years. Yet she was wise enough not to be deceived into believing that the storm had passed. Later that day, Dana called, her voice sharp and tense. "Evelyn, please take a moment to check your email." At this moment, Evelyn dried her hands on a dish towel and flipped open her laptop, her pulse quickening with anticipation. An anonymous tip appeared in Dana's office email, devoid of a sender's name, originating from a burner Gmail account. Included were documents, bank transfers, corporate communications, and a voice recording. Evelyn pressed play, and the sound that filled the air sent a shiver down her spine, leaving her feeling unsteady. Ryan's voice, distinct and rough, issued orders to transfer company funds into offshore accounts, instructing someone named Stewart to conceal reports before the SEC could uncover them. It transcended mere evidence. It was an admission. Dana was once more engaged in conversation. This has evolved beyond mere financial deception. If this information leaks, it could lead to serious consequences. Evelyn, your name has come up. He didn't merely erase you. He hired someone to investigate your past. If this becomes public, you'll be pulled into it as well. It no longer felt like a release. A sense of peril enveloped the atmosphere. Evelyn remained still, absorbing everything around her. She was determined to keep it private. Her struggle had consistently centered on safeguarding her children rather than seeking retribution. Yet, her quietude might now be interpreted as agreement. That night, she hardly found any rest. In the early hours of the morning, precisely at 2 a.m., she lingered on her balcony, cradling a cup of chamomile tea, gazing into the enveloping darkness. Across the street, an unknown black SUV sat idle, its engine silent and windows darkened. It lingered far beyond its welcome. She stepped inside, switched off all the lights, and meticulously ensured that every lock was secure. In the morning, she dropped the boys off at school and headed directly to Dana's office. Later that day, they provided the materials to a federal investigator, with the understanding that Evelyn's name would remain confidential unless absolutely required. She felt vulnerable, as if she had ventured into a tempest without any protection. In just a matter of days, the narrative unfolded. Federal authorities are currently investigating tech mogul Ryan Miles. The headlines shouted. News vans made their way back to her block. Journalists gathered outside her residence. An unauthorized photo of her and the twins surfaced on a gossip blog. Evelyn's phone buzzed incessantly. Producers from talk shows, journalists from online magazines, and a woman asserting she is crafting a narrative about power, love, and betrayal in Silicon Valley. Evelyn rejected each and every one of them. She was uninterested in transforming her suffering into a spectacle. However, Ryan presented a contrasting narrative. His public relations team attempted to craft a different story, asserting that he was set up, attributing the blame to a wayward employee, and portraying himself as the target of corporate undermining. It was unsuccessful. The proof was simply undeniable. More of his assets were frozen by the banks. A warrant has been issued for Stuart Harris, the chief financial officer. Just a few days later, Ryan disappeared without a trace. He failed to appear for a scheduled court hearing. His phones fell silent. Whispers circulated that he had escaped to Canada. Some asserted that he owned a secluded villa in Costa Rica. Evelyn found herself overwhelmed by the swirling rumors. All she understood was that the man who had once commanded a billion-dollar empire was now on the run. Messages were left at her door by the FBI, inquiring about any recent communication. She possessed no gifts to share. Not a phone call. Not a narrative. Silence. Until the correspondence arrived. It bore a postmark from Arizona, inscribed in careful handwriting on unadorned white paper. No return address provided. Only her name etched in his hurried script. At the kitchen table, she opened it, her hands shaking with anticipation. I never imagined it would conclude in such a manner. Commenced. You believe you have a grasp on the world, Evelyn. You believe you hold the reins. And then a single misstep, one choice, and everything crumbles. You may believe you've escaped my grasp, but that's not the case. You were never that. I will be observing closely. She perused it thrice. There are no threats, yet peace remains elusive. It was him once more, manipulation veiled as intimacy. She kept it from the boys. She submitted it to the authorities, who incorporated it into their expanding dossier. Yet from that instant forward, a transformation occurred within her. She halted her steps, lifting her gaze. She put in new locks. She installed cameras outside her apartment. She began her boxing journey at the gym close to Carmichael. Not due to any anticipation of Ryan's return, but because she was determined to never feel powerless again. That weekend, Evelyn whisked the boys away for a delightful day trip to Lake Tahoe. They embarked on a brief hike, tossed stones over the shimmering water, and toasted marshmallows on a compact grill. It was uncomplicated, yet for the first time in months, they shared laughter unburdened by fear. As the boys drifted into slumber in the back seat, Evelyn cast a glance at them through the rearview mirror and softly vowed, I'll never allow anyone to harm you again, not even your dad. She was uncertain about what lay ahead. She was uncertain whether Ryan would ever be discovered, or if his empire would ultimately fall apart. Yet she was aware of this. She had already endured the most challenging times. And regardless of what came next, she was no longer by herself. Before moving on to the next part, kindly subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends. 3 months had slipped by since Ryan vanished, and the media storm had begun to fade. Yet the aftermath he left behind clung to Evelyn as if it were a part of her very being. Sacramento seemed more compact now, as if each alley murmured pieces of her history. The twins had adapted surprisingly well considering the turmoil. Luke maintained his sense of humor, while Mason approached life with an intensity that seemed disproportionate for someone his age. Evelyn, in contrast, struggled to recall the last occasion when she enjoyed a full night's sleep. Each noise beyond her apartment, every strange rap on the door, quickened her heartbeat. Yet, in the face of fear and persistent anxiety, she was reconstructing her life, gradually with care and determination. Dana had linked her with a victims' rights advocate in San Francisco, who assisted her in establishing safeguards for herself and the twins. Evelyn gained entry to a private support group through her. Women who found themselves intertwined with formidable men who became perilous. It was during a gathering at a serene community center close to Twin Peaks that she encountered Heather. Heather had weathered her own tempest. Her former husband, once a revered city councilman, now faced 15 years behind bars for corruption and domestic abuse. Heather was anything but delicate. She was a blend of strength and elegance, and she showed Evelyn more than anyone else how to embrace her story without allowing it to consume her. They gathered every week. At times, they strolled through the Golden Gate Park, enveloped in a quietude that spoke volumes. At other moments, they sipped on bitter coffee, engaging in conversations about survival, betrayal, and the peculiar manner in which strength can emerge from heartbreak. Suddenly, an invitation arrived for Evelyn. A nonprofit organization in Los Angeles, led by women who have survived domestic manipulation and financial abuse, learned about her situation through a legal connection. A summit was convened, exclusive to the public, yet attended by activists, lawyers, and journalists who had reported on prominent whistleblower cases. Evelyn was the one they wanted to hear from. Initially, she declined. She had always found public speaking to be outside her comfort zone. She hesitated, uncertain if she could bear to face unfamiliar faces and recount the darkest chapters of her existence. But Heather met her gaze directly and declared, "Your narrative is no longer solely yours. It's a guide for another soul still wandering through it." 2 weeks later, Evelyn found herself standing behind a wooden podium in a modest LA. In the ballroom, she held a crumpled piece of paper tightly, her fingers shaking with anticipation. She surveyed the crowd, expressions brimming with anguish, intrigue, and optimism. She took a moment to gather herself and started to speak. "I am Evelyn Hayes. I once felt like I was unseen. That was certainly the way my husband liked me best." As she pressed on, she recounted not the tale of Ryan the millionaire or the ensuing scandal, but of the woman who had once pleaded for his attention, who had departed in disgrace, who bore a child in quietude, and who returned not for vengeance but for the sake of truth. Her voice faltered, perhaps just once or twice. Yet, as she concluded, an eerie stillness enveloped the room, and then the audience erupted in applause. Not the courteous type, but the kind that emerges from those who recognize a fragment of their own essence in you. That evening, Evelyn found herself in a cozy Airbnb nestled in West Hollywood. She lay awake, not from anxiety, but because, for the first time, she felt an exhilarating sense of freedom. It felt as though she had finally released a burden she had been shouldering for an eternity. Upon her return to Sacramento the following morning, she was greeted at the airport by the boys and Heather, who beamed with the joy of a proud older sister. Evelyn enveloped her twins in an embrace that radiated warmth and familiarity. Yet, just as she believed the chapter was coming to an end, her past quietly reemerged. In the stillness of the night, her phone vibrated, displaying an unfamiliar number. She almost brushed it off, yet an inexplicable urge compelled her to respond. A resonant voice came through the line, addressing her as Ms. Hayes. "This is Special Agent Crawford representing the United States. Marshals, Ryan Miles has been found." Evelyn held her breath. He was captured in El Paso while attempting to cross into Mexico. He is currently in custody. Expect to hear from us regarding future proceedings. The conversation was brief, lasting under 2 minutes. Once it concluded, Evelyn perched on the edge of her bed, her gaze fixed on the wall. He was apprehended. After months of evasion, of ominous correspondence, of cutting off even his nearest supporters, he was at last apprehended. She ought to have experienced a sense of relief, resolution, yet what she experienced was an unsettling emptiness, as if she had geared up for a confrontation that had abruptly vanished. In the following week, journalists returned, eager for more information. Dana oversaw them with keen vigilance, releasing press statements and refusing interviews. Evelyn declined to make another public appearance. She expressed everything she needed to express in LA. This was no longer about her. The proceedings of Ryan's trial promised to be drawn out and complicated. Serious allegations including embezzlement, obstruction, identity fraud, and conspiracy at the federal level. Evelyn would eventually be summoned to testify, but for the moment, she was advised to continue with her life. The boys were kept in the dark about many specifics, just informed that their father had run afoul of the law and would be absent for some time. Luke remained silent, refraining from inquiring. Mason, however, gazed directly into Evelyn's eyes one night and declared, "I don't want to be like him." Always, Evelyn drew him near and murmured, "You won't. You embody all the qualities he lacked." In the tranquil weeks that ensued, Evelyn started her search for a new home, a location that's a little further from the hustle of downtown Sacramento, featuring a backyard for the kids, and perhaps even a furry companion. She discovered a quaint house in Roseville, unpretentious yet tidy, secure with lemon trees gracing the backyard and a sunroom that she immediately designated as her reading nook. Moving day was akin to the process of shedding an old skin. She allowed the boys to choose their own wall colors. Mason chose a rich, deep green, while Luke opted for an orange so vibrant it was almost overwhelming. Yet she remained unfazed. A new creation was taking shape. A life enriched not by the shadows of a man's dominion, but grounded in the simple pleasures that bring true happiness. And what about Evelyn? She began to craft her words. Not a memoir, not at this moment, but rather a personal journal. In the quiet hours of the night, once the boys had drifted off to sleep, she would settle into her sunroom, capturing fragments of her journey on paper. Fragments of recollection, instances of trepidation, insights that emerged solely through the passage of time. She was uncertain of its future form. Perhaps it's just nothing. Yet it seemed like yet another progression onward. Yet another layer revealed. A different reality articulated openly. A leisurely, ordinary tempo. Evelyn had endured the turmoil, her breath caught in her throat with each unfolding revelation regarding Ryan's misdeeds. His treachery ran far deeper than she had ever envisioned. He had deceived not only their family but also numerous others, including several of his nearest business associates. The trial stretched on for quite some time, yet when the verdict finally arrived, it was delivered with remarkable speed. Ryan Miles received a 25-year sentence in federal prison. Evelyn chose not to be present at the sentencing. She had endured plenty of his dramatic displays before. Witnessing him confined didn't alter the course of her life, so she resolved to press on. What was important now were her sons and the future she was striving to create. Luke and Mason, in spite of the shadows cast by their formative years, were emerging as spirited young boys, imbued with robust values and grand aspirations. Luke aspired to be a comedian, constantly telling jokes to bring a smile to his mother's face, while Mason was more reserved, introspective, and had developed a passion for graphic design. They were her source of strength, and each day spent with them served as a testament to their journey together. The residence in Roseville was precisely what Evelyn had envisioned. The quaint, inviting abode had transformed into their refuge, a space for restoration and self-exploration. It lacked extravagance or grandeur, yet it resonated with a sense of belonging. A new beginning unfolded, bringing along its unique hurdles, yet Evelyn was resolute in her commitment to confront them directly. She had secured part-time work as a freelancer, allowing her the freedom to remain at home with the boys while still generating enough income to maintain their lifestyle. One evening, as she nestled in her sunroom, she found herself lost in contemplation of the past year, pondering all that had transpired, the sorrow, the treachery, the humiliation, and ultimately the release. It had been a challenging journey, yet she finally understood that she was no longer merely existing. She was flourishing. The persistent burden of Ryan's presence in her life had dissipated, allowing her to concentrate on what genuinely mattered: her offspring, her tranquility, and her personal development. Evelyn had discovered something surprising in this new chapter of her life. Herself. In the serene hours, during the mornings when the boys remained in slumber and the home was tranquil, she started to delve into her own imaginative pursuits. She began crafting short stories, and a few found their way into online magazines. The affirmation was modest yet meaningful, serving as a reminder that her voice remained, undiminished by the clamor of her history. Suddenly, a message appeared before her. A message arrived from a woman named Jennifer, who had once worked alongside Ryan during his initial tenure at a tech company in San Francisco. Intrigued by Evelyn's tale, Jennifer felt a strong desire to connect in person. Initially, Evelyn felt a moment of doubt. She felt uncertain about the woman's intentions, whether it was to offer an apology for Ryan or to unearth past grievances. However, their curiosity prevailed, leading them to set up a meeting for coffee at a serene cafe by the river in downtown Sacramento. Upon Jennifer's arrival, she completely defied the corporate persona that Evelyn had envisioned. She exuded warmth, was easy to talk to, and radiated authenticity. They engaged in a lengthy conversation, during which Jennifer recounted how Ryan had initially served as a guiding figure in her early professional journey, only to later become manipulative and domineering as their business relationship evolved into something more personal. Jennifer was among the rare individuals who dared to confront Ryan, and as a result, she lost her job and found herself blacklisted from the industry. Listening to Jennifer's story felt like encountering a reflection of her own, and for the first time, Evelyn sensed a shared connection in her journey. As they said their goodbyes, Jennifer embraced Evelyn and softly murmured, "You're more resilient than you realize. You're not by yourself." The echoes of those words lingered with Evelyn well beyond her return home. She understood that, in spite of all that Ryan had stripped away, he had not emerged victorious. She had risen from the debris, fortified and with a clearer vision of her desires in life. The treachery, the anguish, and the long years of deceit had been challenging, yet they had forged a path toward something deeper, liberation. Evelyn settled into her chair that evening, her fingers poised above the keyboard. She possessed a narrative waiting to unfold, one that transcended Ryan, their union, and the heartache. It centered on her journey, her tenacity, her strength, and the significance of taking back her story. With every word, she experienced a sense of liberation, empowerment, and tranquility regarding the path she had traversed.